GLC is now offering a free audio stream of our 24/7 broadcast that we're calling GLC Radio, an online radio station that broadcasts our round-the-clock audio stream on a variety of platforms. GLC Radio gives you the ability to listen to GLC virtually anywhere, through your home or office computer, or on the go with a mobile device. You can access GLC Radio through our website or by searching for God's Learning Channel through iTunes Internet Radio, TuneInRadio.com, or on Shoutcast.com. Explore various GLC Radio-enabled mobile apps by visiting our website at glc.us.com/listen/GLC Radio. GLC Radio, your free connection to GLC anywhere, anytime.
You know, I was thinking, sitting here waiting for this to open up, you and I grew up during the days of World War II. It was always interesting. We got our news on Saturday afternoon when we went to the movie theater. That's the only way we got it.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you what was going on now in this world after all these years.
You'd have to stay at the movie theater.
Oh, but they're only going to let you see what they want you to see, though.
True.
That's what's really interesting about it all.
is.
Okay, before we move any further ahead, we're going to give you one reminder about Max Richardson's Meet and Greet the Artist. It happens tomorrow night, which is March the 12th, at the Tribeca Synagogue for the Arts, where his art is on display. Hopefully you've seen the commercial promo spot that we've been running for him, but you're going to have to RSVP for that event. So log on to photomaxrichardson.com. You can RSVP and go. You really want to see his stuff in up close and personal.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
It's totally different than just seeing a picture on TV. You know?
It is.
We can't do his photography justice through the airwaves as much as we try. You've got a letter.
Yeah, I've got a letter. Dearest Al, Tommy, Amy, and crew, I'm sending a check for $20 to help with a transmission problem. I pray it will help to keep you broadcasting the truth which we need so very much. I love most of all the program, especially Update News and Light of the Southwest. May God bless all of you. Love, Helen in Abilene. She wrote a good letter. It's just my glasses.
Well, I have to say a special thank you to you, Helen, because you're in Abilene. So you're not affected by the transmission problem that's going on in Lubbock. And for all of you who are not in the Lubbock area who have contributed, may God richly bless you.
That's right.
For what you've done.
That's right.
And I do have really good news for you. We have now reached our goal, and the Lubbock repair equipment
Can be bought.
has not been ordered, but it can be ordered now. We have the funds.
Praise the Lord.
But, so yeah, I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful for that. But I was paying bills today, and I still got some more bills to pay, and I need some money. So please help. Because, you know, everything is important. Every little piece of it is important. And I'm so grateful for the viewers. I'm so excited that so many people are ordering Barry Wagner's book. I'm going to talk a little bit more today, later on in the news, tying it to some of the things that are going on.
Okay.
The calling that's on our life. Mom, you've got a scripture that you want to share with us.
I do, and it's this. It's Proverbs 14, 7 through 9. Stay away from fools, because they cannot teach you anything. A wise person will understand what to do, but a foolish person is dishonest. Fools don't care if they sin, but honest people work at being right. And again, that's Proverbs 14, 7 through 9. And I tied a scripture with this because you have to be strong not to listen to fools. And Joshua 1:9 says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid of them or at them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will never fail you or forsake you. Well, that one was from Deuteronomy 30, verse 6, but I love the one in Joshua 1:9. It says, I command you, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Those are two really good scriptures.
Well, the thing is that if you want to be honest and right, especially today, you're going to have to be strong and courageous
That's
to do
right.
it. Because there's lots of people that will come against you
That's right.
for standing up for truth. And we see it happening all the time.
Yes, we do.
You know, it's
Yes, we do.
not a good thing. Thanks for those scriptures, Mom. I think we'll get to the news. Right over in Dallas. This comes from One News Now. Whether you're in Dallas or not, you might want to pay attention to this.
Yes, indeed.
A Jewish congregation in Dallas that defeated a lawsuit to stop their meetings in a rabbi's home is under attack again. Now, that unsuccessful lawsuit filed against Toras Chaim was filed by a neighbor, but the court ruled in favor of the synagogue. Now, the synagogue is being sued by the city of Dallas, which contends that using it as a meeting place is out of character because of the residential climate of the neighborhood. Justin Butterfield of Liberty Institute says some of the city's demands are, just a little bit outrageous, such as creating parking spaces and building a second entrance to the home for the small congregation. Get this. Last Saturday, there were 17 persons that attended the synagogue at the home, says Butterfield. Now remember, this is an Orthodox Jewish group, so they don't drive on the Sabbath. But Dallas is wanting them to install 13 parking spaces.
That's right.
Good golly.
It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous.
Are you going to finish the article?
Okay. One News Now first reported last year that a former homeowner association president opposed the congregation's presence. The same story also noted that the city of Dallas was demanding the private home must comply with city and federal codes, such as the Americans with Disability Acts. Liberty reports that Collin County District Court Judge Jill Willis threw out the case against the synagogue on February 4th. Butterfield predicts that years of court precedent would tend to favor Toras Chaim, noting that prayer meetings and Bible studies have been a part of America since its founding. But the attorney warns that if the city of Dallas can stop this Orthodox Jewish congregation from meeting in the home, they can stop anybody in the city from having friends over for prayer, for Bible study, or even just socially.
17 people.
17 people. That could just be a backyard barbecue.
Well,
And if it
our
were,
family is bigger than that.
That's
That's what I
right.
was going to say.
That's right.
Don't have any family gatherings in Dallas, okay?
No, don't give in to the bloomin'.
Okay.
Moving right along.
This next article comes from Israel National News, the AFP, and the BBC. An Arab resident of eastern Jerusalem who joined the Islamic State last October has been executed by the terrorist group. The Israeli Arab teenager was accused of spying for the Israeli Mossad. In a video of the execution distributed by ISIS, the victim was identified as 19-year-old Mohammed Saeed Ismail Musalam. His father, however, told Haaretz that his son did travel to join ISIS several months ago, but that the claims of his being a Mossad spy are simply lies. Instead, it appears Musalam may have been one of a number of growing foreign ISIS recruits getting cold feet due to the growing military stranglehold on the group, and that he attempted to flee. Those who are caught are generally accused of spying and then executed.
But it's not so much Musalam's death that should be of greatest concern, as much as it is his executioner. Dressed in the standard orange jumpsuit, Musalam is shown kneeling in front of a young boy who appears to be no more than 12 years old, and a man standing at his side. The man, speaking in French, issues threats against Jews in France before the boy walks around in front of the hostage and shoots him in the forehead with a pistol and shouts, "Allah is greatest," while he shoots Muslim 3 more times as he lies on the ground.
Speaking before the execution, the adult ISIS terrorist vows his group will conquer Jerusalem and gloats over January's deadly terrorist attack on a Paris kosher supermarket. "O Jews, indeed Allah has gifted us with killing your followers in your own stronghold in France," he says, referring to the attack by Ahmadi Koulibaly, who swore allegiance to the group. "As for the near term, you will see the caliphate pounding on your lands and on your fortresses. They will liberate Jerusalem from your filth by Allah's permission," he adds.
It's not the first time ISIS has used a child to execute alleged spies. Back in January of this year, a young Kazakh boy was shown executing 2 alleged Russian spies. These young boys are known as the Cubs of the Caliphate. In related news, it was reported on Tuesday that about 80 children rescued from a Boko Haram camp in Cameroon cannot remember their own names or origins, according to an aid official who visited them. The children, ages between 5 and 18, did not speak English, French, or any local language, said Christopher Formoyo, a director for the U.S.-based National Democratic Institute, the NDI.
The children were rescued after security forces, acting on a tip-off, raided what was thought to have been a Quranic school. Foromiung told the BBC that he had visited an orphanage that was helping rehabilitate the children. He said the children had spent so long with their captors, being indoctrinated in jihadist ideology, that they had lost track of who they were. They've lost touch with their parents, he said. They've lost touch with people in their villages. They're not able to articulate, to help trace their relationships. They can't even tell you what their names are. You know, we might want to consider that these children were in training to be cubs of the caliphate. It was Boko Haram, was it not, in Nigeria just 2-3 weeks ago? A 10-year-old girl blew herself up.
Yes.
Now, don't you know that she had to have been indoctrinated, or they had to have threatened her family for her to do that?
Yeah.
One or the other.
Yeah. Oh, this comes from the Times Live. It's a fresh look at an old problem. Palestinian Bassam Ed, 56, grew up in a refugee camp in East Jerusalem, but does not blame Israel for those difficult years. In fact, he says he would rather be a Palestinian refugee in Israel than in Syria, Lebanon, or Jordan. He blames Jordan for removing 500 people from the old city in Jerusalem in 1966 and creating the camp he lived in for 33 years. I'd lived in a crowded camp in a house less than 80 square feet in size. When he was a child, there was no electricity for about 5 years. We struggled, he said. It was only in 1999, when he won international financial awards for his human rights work with Palestinians, that he could afford to move into an apartment in Israel.
Aid, a human rights activist, political analyst, and commentator on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is in Johannesburg to counter the propaganda of Israel Apartheid Week. In fact, Eid has been brought to South Africa by the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, the Zionist Federation of South Africa, and other Jewish organizations to counter the messages being put out during Israel Apartheid Week, which began on Monday. Pro-Palestinian groups use Apartheid Week to promote the idea of a comparison of the treatment of Palestinians to the oppressions of blacks in South Africa during the apartheid years. Eid says, Israel is not an apartheid state. It's a democracy. Arabs are treated at the best hospitals and study at the best universities in Israel. Did that happen to black people during apartheid, he asked?
Organizations supporting Apartheid Week use it to call for a boycott of Israeli products to force Israel to its knees. He said that outside interference and calls for boycotts of Israel make the Palestine-Israeli situation worse. This, said Aide, will lead to the genocide of Palestinians. The Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Campaign, the BDS, wants factories in Israeli-occupied territories on the West Bank closed. But this would result in Palestinians losing their jobs, he said. Following pressure by the BDS campaign in Europe, the Israeli-owned SodaStream factory on the West Bank closed last October. While independent media reports cite that 500 Palestinians lost their jobs as a result of the closure. Aide said it led to 900 Palestinian job losses, with 1,300 more expected this month. His main message is that Israelis and Palestinians need to solve the long-running conflict, and outsiders' interference only adds oil to the fire.
Eid slammed South Africans for comparing Israel to apartheid South Africa, saying it was inaccurate and added to the existing hatred between Israelis and Palestinians. What the two groups need, he believes, is a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, similar to South Africa's to build bridges, not more hate. Criticizing his own people for having a backward culture, even calling it primitive, Eid says that all Arab countries are run by dictatorships. Eid, a practicing Muslim, said, "The Arab culture is based on religion. We still see Christians and Jewish people as godless. His father and he were taught the same things at school. That's not progress," he said.
This human rights activist is frustrated by what he sees as a self-defeating action of his people. Palestinians have, since the 1970s, been experts at losing every opportunity offered them to have land for a Palestinian state, he said. The leaders of the Palestinians, Fatah on the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza, do not respect human rights, do not have elections or democracy, and are dividing the Palestinians, he said. Normal countries use weapons to defend themselves from enemies. Hamas, ruler of Gaza, uses civilians to defend itself, he said disgustedly. The UN said that in at least 3 instances last July, during the conflict between Gaza and Israel, it found weapons stored by Hamas supporters at UN schools in Gaza, making the schools targets for Israeli missiles.
He does not lay blame on Israel for the problems of the Palestinian people. He said, "Palestinians have been suffering for the past 66 years, and nobody, neither the Arabs nor the Palestinian leadership, give us any kind of help. This is the main reason I'm so angry and upset. I don't want my children to have the same kind of life as I did." And he believes that the plight of the Palestinians will only get worse as the world becomes more worried about the Islamic State and other terror groups. Eid said Palestinians in Gaza should get rid of their leadership. Hamas is still in power after being elected for a 4-year term in 2006. Elections were due in 2010, but 5 years later, they've still not been held. Palestinians are desperate for democracy, he said. So I think maybe the world needs to start looking at this from a whole different light. They really need to start investigating, because a lot of money has been poured into the Palestinian areas trying to help the people. But the money's being stopped. And it's also being used for things it's not intended to be used for.
Wow.
And I think when the world wakes up and starts seeing what the real problem is, then we can really help the Palestinian people.
Look at what Arafat did. He took that money and became the world's 2nd richest man. Due to the finances that's supposed to go into the Palestinians, it went into
To the
Arafat's
people.
pocket. That's the
Still happening.
Okay, well, this one comes from The Tablet. Last week, in his address to Congress, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned of the threat posed to the Middle East and to Jews by Iran and its proxies. One such proxy was Hezbollah, the internationally recognized terrorist group, and Netanyahu offered a quote from its leader by way of illustration. for those who believe that Iran threatens the Jewish state, but not the Jewish people. Listen to Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, Iran's chief terrorist proxy. He said, "If all the Jews gather in Israel, it will save us the trouble of chasing them down around the world."
Well, of course, critics immediately pounced on the quotation, claiming it to be a complete fabrication dating back to 2002. Nicholas Noy, founder and editor of the translation outlet MideastWire.com and a co-author of a book on Nasrallah, quickly wrote a blog post to make the case, noting that there were other documented anti-Semitic utterances from Nasrallah. Noy claimed that Netanyahu had deliberately chosen a false one for his own propagandist ends. This allegation that Netanyahu had put anti-Semitic words in Hezbollah's mouth was subsequently repeated by reputable journalists at the Washington Post, among others.
But there's one small problem: the existence of an audio recording of Nasrallah's 2002 speech. And he certainly says the words that Netanyahu cited in his speech. Here's an English translation of Nasrallah's words, somewhat more elaborate than Netanyahu's paraphrase. "But I'll tell you, among the signs and signals which guide us in the Islamic prophecies and not only in the Jewish prophecies, is that this state of Israel will be established and that the Jews will gather from all parts of the world into occupied Palestine, not in order to bring about the Antichrist and the end of the world, but rather that Allah, the glorified and most high, wants to save you from having to go to the ends of the world, for they have gathered in one place. They have gathered in one place, and there the final and decisive battle will take place."
Of course, the fact that Hezbollah's head would spout blatantly anti-Semitic bromides should surprise no one familiar with the organization's track record. To his credit, Noy has since appended a correction to his post on Netanyahu's speech, though the London Review of Books has yet to notify its readers that the Nasrallah quote was not erroneous.
Okay, now, this is very, very interesting because that quote clearly said that there are Jewish prophecies.
That's right.
And there are Muslim prophecies that all the Jews will return to the land. Okay? I'm going to tie that directly to God's call in Jeremiah to the Gentiles to bring the Jews back to the land of Israel. You know, I think a lot about the day that I will stand before God and answer to Him. Whether by the world's estimation I'm a failure or an extreme winner isn't going to make any difference to God. What's going to matter is, did I do what God called me to do? And I've been thinking a little bit about sitting on the couch with Sandra Barris and her growing up in Chicago and I think maybe it was Ohio, but realizing that when the state of Israel was formed again in 1948, when she found that out, she wanted to be part of prophecy. That's why she lives in Israel. And I look at that and I go, you know, Lord, for a couple of thousand years, not much prophecy was really being fulfilled.
Right.
Everything was kind of like, you know, on a hiatus for a while. And now we all know it's just happening right and left and right and left and right and left. And there's one prophecy that I know of for sure that the Gentiles get to be a part of. So are we going to be like Sandra Barris and say, you know what, come hell or high water, I am joining in because I want to be a part of that prophecy. You can sit back and go, no, I don't want to, and that's fine. You won't get rewards for it, but you will get rewards for having the heart to be part of something that He said had to happen before the Messiah could come. And that's very exciting to me.
It's part of God's heart because he wants them home so He can bless them and protect them. So that should be our heart too.
Yes, it should. I think that's part of why GLC exists, so that we can help everybody out there who has that in their heart to join together and to shed some light on the false teachings that we've been under for a couple of thousand years. Okay, we've got one more article to share before we close up today. Comes from Arut Sheva, the Yad Vashem website, and the New York Daily News. 40 years after his death, a legal battle is playing out in Jerusalem over personal documents belonging to Oskar Schindler, including copies of the long list of Jews he saved from the Holocaust. This is all according to the AFP. Schindler, a member of the Nazi Party who died 40 years ago, kept records of the 1,200 refugees he rescued during World War II. His story captured public attention decades later with Steven Spielberg's 1993 Oscar-winning film, Schindler's List.
Hope you saw that movie. At issue is a suitcase containing thousands of historic documents and photos that has been in the possession of the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem since 1999. Erika Rosenberg, an Argentinian woman, is fighting for ownership as the designated heir to the estate of Schindler's late wife, Emily. Yad Vashem insists the documents never belonged to Emily Schindler, but were passed on by Oskar Schindler to a third party before his death. The case, which is expected to go to court next month, sheds unusual light on Schindler's personal life after he saved some 1,200 Jews from the Nazis during World War II. It also raises questions about the ownership rights of documents that once belonged to important figures like Schindler, whose personal papers have in the past turned up at auction.
Schindler was an ethnic German raised in a Catholic family from then Czechoslovakia. During World War II, as a member of the Nazi Party, he persuaded German officers through bribes and other means to let him employ Jews at his factory, saving them from the death camps. After the war, Schindler immigrated with his wife to Argentina, but in 1958, he returned to Germany alone and died there in 1974. She remained his legal heir. The suitcase containing Schindler's personal documents and pictures, as well as a number of copies of the original list of Jews he saved, eventually turned up in the home of a friend, the late Anna Marie Stair.
In her lawsuit, Rosenberg, who was Emily Schindler's biographer and close friend, described Stair as Schindler's lover and claims she took it from his home after he died. But Yad Vashem's legal team says their relationship was platonic and that Schindler had given her the suitcase and its contents as a gift. According to the plaintiff, the suitcase was found at Stair's home after she died, and her children handed it over to a German newspaper and the German National Archives in 1997. When news of the discovery became public, Emily Schindler took legal action in Germany to retrieve the suitcase and its contents. But court documents show that when a judge turned up to search the premises of the newspaper in 1999, he was told that they had already been sent to Yad Vashem. In 2001, Emily Schindler returned to Germany, where she died childless. In the last decade of her life, Emily became close to Rosenberg, her biographer, and designated her as heir to her estate.
Rosenberg doesn't say in the lawsuit what she intends to do with the documents. Yad Vashem claims that Rosenberg is a serial suer who was seeking to exploit Schindler's memory for her personal gain. None of the original list of Jews comprising the Schindler list remain, but historians believe 7 copies were made of them shortly after World War II. Only one such copy is currently in private hands, and every so often, unsuccessful efforts are made to sell that document, most recently in 2013 with a starting price of $3 million. Documents related to Schindler have financial value as well as historic value. So be praying for that, because you know what? In my estimation, those need to stay at Yad Vashem.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
They do.
Every foreign dignitary who goes to Israel, it's mandatory that they visit Yad Vashem. Hey, we love you. We'll see you Friday.